Thank you for joining me on this special edition of Flying Tales. I'm Ken Wayne, KRON 4 anchor and pilot. You can see my plane behind me. What we're missing this time is our dog Mango. He passed away last year, but he's still in our hearts as we continue our rescue missions. And this is a big one, the biggest one so far. It's an international rescue story. It involves getting that cat out of war-torn Ukraine and bringing him here to the Bay Area. That might seem like a lot of effort to get a cat, but it was also an effort to mend the heart of a sad little girl.
Hi, my name is Agnes.
This is a story of a little girl and a cat.
I have a big family.
These were the happy days, the days before the war. As Russian forces swept across the border into Ukraine, 10-year-old Agnes and her family decided to flee Odessa.
And there was no room for any animal that we have.
Maria and Alexander Bashinar, along with their daughters Eleanor, Angelina, and Agnesa, had to leave just about everything behind, including Agnesa's beloved cat, Arseny. After a few months in Romania, the family was allowed to enter the U.S., to the Bay Area. On their way to San Francisco, their flight attendant learned their story.
And I just felt this sense of connection with her.
The two women stayed in touch.
I messaged her and said, "So how are you? How's America treating you? Is everything okay?" And she said, "Yes, everything is good, except my youngest daughter wants to go home. She cries every day because she's missing her cat."
She missed sleeping with her cat, and she missed hugging him. She missed everything about the cat because she'd grown up with him.
Dee shared the news with another flight attendant who rescues animals.
And she just sent me a text and asked if there was anything I could do to help with that huge request.
The request, find a way to get Arseny back into the arms of Agnesa.
Well, yeah, it was pretty overwhelming. So, I mean, I'd done other things, but nothing like this. And all I could think of was, my God, we got a war-torn country here and you want me to get a cat out of Ukraine.
Caroline started working on the rescue plan from her home in Hawaii, contacting Angelica in Houston.
And I said, well, if you get that cat out of Ukraine, that's a piece of cake. We will figure out a way to, get that cat.
Maria's brother-in-law was watching the cat in Ukraine and laid the groundwork for the rescue.
I say, okay, you need to get him vaccinated, microchipped, and passport. So he says, okay, let's try to do that.
He took Arseny on his motorcycle across the Ukraine border to Moldova. Then the cat was passed to a driver who took him and a refugee family to Romania. Arseny spent about a month in Bucharest while the rescue plan continued. It was at this point Agnesa was finally told her beloved cat might be coming to join her.
So I say, okay, let's pray, but I cannot promise that it can happen. She was happy and she says, he will come, he will definitely come. Just believe.
Right.
But I got a text message saying like, hey, can we pick up the cat tonight instead?
Mimi Kate was on vacation in Greece and ready to respond. She cut her trip short to pick up the cat in Bucharest and bring him home. But the Ukrainian documents wouldn't allow Arseny on a flight from Romania.
He must have his legalized passport. So all the documents must be checked for him in Romania.
A tuk-tuk driver volunteered to help. In Mimi's hands, Arseny was on the move to wrap up the details in Bucharest, and the texts and pictures started coming in as the cat got his documents and finally made his way to Athens, then Montreal, then Mimi's home in Seattle. At SFO, the family waited. Agnesa hadn't seen her cat, hadn't slept a full night for months. Finally, after 7,000 miles, the reunion they'd been waiting for.
You can't smoke the cat. Not this one. Family's here.
After that incredible journey, the family and their cat Arseny are now in Sonoma County, working on a new start here in America. There were tears and smiles, hugs and balloons at SFO when 10-year-old Agnesa was finally reunited with her beloved cat Arseny.
The Bazinar family, Father Alexander, Mother Maria, and daughters Eleanor, Angelina, and Agnesa, are adjusting to their new lives. Arseni has a new playmate, a kitten named Tosha. The family is staying in a large country home among vineyards and olive trees near Cloverdale in Sonoma County.
Now when Arseni is with us, so it's like a home is with us. But like a part of our home is with us.
All of this happened thanks to this man, Jeff Peters.
When the invasion happened, I felt like we needed to do something to help people.
Jeff's efforts to go to Europe to evacuate war refugees didn't pan out, but he did find an app for Ukrainians seeking help and connected with the Bazinar family.
Maria sent an email and saying, we've been matched and we have a family of 6. And so I went to my son and I said, instead of renting this house, which he was planning on doing, would you be willing to donate it for 2 years?
When the family got here, they had a beautiful but empty home. That's when the people of Cloverdale stepped up.
And then everybody in the community just wanted to help. So they started donating money, they donated food, they donated gas cards, they donated gift cards. One lady said, do you need a sewing machine? And another person found out that the girls are very musically oriented, so they donated the piano.
Cloverdale gave this family a lot, but Cloverdale got a lot back.
The whole community has learned a few lessons. They learned about Ukraine and about the situation with refugees in Ukraine, but they also learned how to be a community.
The Bazinars are working on their English and plan to move forward with new lives as Americans. Agnesa is sleeping better at night now that she's reunited with Arseni. The older girls are learning to drive and going to school. Cloverdale is giving the family a good start.
Мне очень нравятся люди здесь в Америке.
We like a lot of these people.
Мне очень нравится здесь эта география, это место Кловердейл.
Like this geography, Cloverdale, California.
Нам здесь очень хорошо.
We like here so much.
И это все благодаря вам.
And it's because of you.
Спасибо вам.
Thank you so much. And especially
We'll continue to follow the Bazinar family. Coming up, wildlife specialists had said this injured bird was unlikely to survive in the wild. How the falcon proved them wrong after months of rehab in the North Bay, followed by a long journey back home. Plus, a cross-border journey to rescue a sea turtle from freezing Canadian waters to California in the middle of pandemic lockdowns. But first, a Bay Area animal sanctuary that's fueling a nationwide effort to help senior dogs find their forever families. Welcome back. The last week of every October is Saving Senior Dogs Week. The annual event aims to rescue, rehabilitate, and rehome senior dogs to save them from being euthanized. It started gaining momentum across the country this year, all thanks to a senior dog sanctuary in Sonoma County.
Oh, they're amazing creatures. Truly amazing creatures. I'll cry.
Alice Main runs Lily's Senior Dog Sanctuary in Petaluma. Of the countless animal shelters and rescues across the country, only a small fraction focus on senior dogs.
It is not clear exactly how many senior dog rescues there are in the country, but I don't think there are more than 50, probably 50, 55.
32 of them are part of the newly formed group Saving Senior Dogs USA. The goal, rescue the dogs others gave up on.
Now, they deserve a good ending. They don't deserve to end up in a shelter or alone on a street, being neglected.
Maine says you don't have to worry about chewing or potty training with older dogs. She says they're much calmer and even grateful to have a new home.
The gratitude just pours out of them. And they're easy dogs. They fit into a family easily. For the most part, you have very little behavioral problems. You have very little training problems.
She says older dogs are quick to adapt to new surroundings. And yes, you can teach an old dog.
Oh, yes, you can. Absolutely. They haven't given up their brains, and we've taught a lot of old dogs new tricks.
So they adapt.
They adapt very readily, yes. They're so grateful and they're so thankful.
An added plus, bringing an older dog into the family helps children learn how to treat seniors.
One of the things that's really interesting about the young families is that they say what a good role model it is for their kids to learn about senior beings and taking care of seniors and honoring seniors and respecting them. And I get a lot of comments like that from parents of people that have small kids.
Maine says if you think you're doing an old dog a favor by adoption, you're only partially right. The real winner is you.
The rewards are endless for us. You know, we'd like to think they're endless for the dogs too, but we get so much more out of it than we could possibly ever give the dogs. It's just really a heartwarming thing to do.
Coming up next, one of my favorite stories, a flight over raging wildfires to get this guy, Patches the goat, a new home. It's not just dogs and cats that sometimes need a lift. In September of 2020, I got to fly with an animal that I never carried in the plane before, an adorable little goat.
Don't jump, Patchy.
I met the Upton family in the parking lot of the Whiteman Airport in Los Angeles with their little goat, Patches. This 10-year-old pygmy goat has been with the family since he was just 8 weeks old.
Patchy, where are you going? He's just been like our little baby dog, basically, like a puppy. Follows us around.
He was a Christmas surprise for Susan's son, Vaughn, who grew up with Patches.
He's just a sweet little guy.
So why do you have to let him go?
We are moving from our horse property and relocating into a duplex.
It's pretty hard to let him go, but I mean, I'm just glad he's going to go to a home that is going to love him and take care of him.
It was time to get Patches to the plane, and that meant trying to hustle him past the unsuspecting staff at the airport office. The next challenge, getting this 40-plus pound goat into a cage in the back seat. There you go. Let's put in there. There you go. Oh, yeah. Okay, get the butt in.
Oh, there we go.
Good boy. Good boy. You did it.
Lay down, buddy. It's okay, Patchy. We got you, buddy. We're going to make sure that you're safe.
And then the question, how's Patches going to handle the takeoff? The answer, no problem. The visibility was great heading over the mountains near the Grapevine, but that changed once we crossed into the Central Valley. Smoke was everywhere. We flew toward Modesto to avoid the fire tankers battling the SCU complex fires. We saw a huge plume of smoke from more than 50 miles away, towering above our 8,500-foot cruising altitude. 3 hours after leaving LA, we touched down in Petaluma, where rescuers lined the airport fence to welcome their newest resident.
There's Patches. There he is. Yay!
Patches handled the flight like a pro, and a short time later, he was at his new home, Wonder Farm Sanctuary in Pengrove. The founder says she made sure the family that surrendered Patches knew that he was in good hands.
But I had a long talk with her and explained what we do. I sent photographs of this place, and she said, yeah, that's exactly what I would like for him.
Cute little guy. Just like Patches, a sea turtle from Southern California also ventured up north in 2020, but this one went way too far north, ended up in Canada, and bringing it back home wasn't easy during COVID-related lockdowns.
A journey of more than 1,000 miles and a rehab that lasted almost a year is coming to an end off the coast of San Diego. This olive Ridley sea turtle is about to be released back to its home.
They're like dinosaurs. They overcome so much. 6 of the 7 species are either threatened or endangered, and they are just amazing animals.
The turtle was found on Vancouver Island, Canada, far from its home territory. Being exposed to water below 50 degrees can leave the turtle in a condition called cold stun. Its heart rate and circulation decreases, leaving it so lethargic it can't even swim. How this olive ridley sea turtle got here is anyone's guess.
It's not unusual for a marine animal to travel so far. We've worked with a lot of olive ridleys that have come from Oregon, Seattle, Northern California. This is our first olive ridley that's come from Canada.
Since he was found stranded near the town of Port Alberni, he was named Bernie Stranders. Bernie was taken to the Vancouver Aquarium for rehab and was expected to be returned to Southern California last winter. But then COVID happened and the border closed. Finally, about a week ago, Bernie was able to be driven across to Seattle. That's where he was picked up by volunteer pilots with an organization called Turtles Fly 2. He was loaded up at Boeing Field and took to the skies for San Diego. There, animal care specialists from SeaWorld took over to prepare Bernie for the last leg of his journey, including prepping him for a GPS tracker to monitor his recovery. About 7 miles off Point Loma, at long last, Bernie Stranders was stranded no more. He was returned home to the warm 74-degree Southern California water.
Well, I mean, this is definitely a wow factor. We get to take this animal and put it back in the ocean, and hopefully it'll swim thousands of miles and make more little olive ridley sea turtle babies.
Coming up from slow to fast, the fastest animal in the world needs a ride. From the Bay Area to Southern California, we're going to take you along as an injured falcon is returned to the wild. Sometimes even birds need a little lift. Back in August, I got to fly a peregrine falcon to its home territory in Southern California. Some Bay Area wildlife rescuers had nursed the girl back to health and needed a hand getting it back to the wild. It's a Flying Tails trip we're calling the Flight of the Falcon.
She doesn't have a name or even much of a backstory. All we know is this bird was found injured near Carlsbad, and wildlife specialists said she was unlikely to survive in the wild.
There was significant documentation of a lot of head trauma and a lot of eye issues at that time.
The peregrine falcon is considered the fastest animal on Earth, flying up to 200 miles an hour to snatch its prey.
And I've seen peregrines catch bats on the wing. So as bats are flying out from, roost, they're just flying and catching them in air and then landing on the ground, just pulling them apart.
State Fish and Wildlife sent the bird to Sonoma Wildlife Rescue near Petaluma.
We also have an enclosure. It's actually called the Raptor Recovery Center. It's a 100-foot building with flight hallways and an area where you could live test a bird of prey to make sure that they could survive by catching their own prey.
It was during its rehabilitation here that a doctor found that the bird had made a remarkable recovery, and instead of living its life in an enclosure, it might be fit enough to be set free.
We had to make sure that it still had the appropriate behavior and temperament of a wild animal. And we had to make sure that its flight capacity was appropriate because there was an old wing injury as well. And so we went through all of those parameters, and over the course of a couple weeks, it did great.
But it's a 500-mile drive to Carlsbad, added stress to an already high-strung animal. The falcon was put in this small cardboard box, and within minutes, we were airborne. 3.5 hours later, we were returning for final at Carlsbad. On the ground, we were met by volunteer Jerry McGuire, who took possession of the falcon for the last phase, the release. A few minutes later, he was at a nearby reservoir where the falcon that had been on the mend since last February was finally returned home.
That is the reward that we do this for. And with birds, of course, just being able to see them soar, being able to see them take off and take flight, which is just such an amazing capacity to be able to see that. And this particular bird, how did a couple loops around the lake before it went off in the distance. And so, it's anthropomorphizing, but it feels like it's saying goodbye, that it's saying thank you on the way out.
Some of the videos that I got to see of it flying to freedom were just I still can't stop thinking about it. It's just extraordinary.
Falcons, turtles, goats, dogs, a Ukrainian cat. That does it for this special edition of Flying Tales. And remember, saving one animal may not change the world, but it will change that animal's world for the better. Thanks for watching.